Hey guys, here's a complete guide to leveling up your TF2 game. If you clicked on this video, you're probably either a new player looking to learn or a seasoned player fact-checking my info. Either way, I hope you find this informative and useful. I can almost guarantee you that if you practice these tips, you'll improve a lot from where you are now. And if you're a veteran, well, feel free to share your own tips with newer players in the comments. Alright, let's dive right into the deep end. I want to talk a lot about aiming. Aiming is a core concept in TF2 and honestly in almost every game. Well, what do you really need to know when it comes to TF2? Good question. Our first subtopic is going to be leading your shots and predicting where your enemy's movement paths are. But first, a little history lesson. I played sniper for quite a few hours and actually got pretty good at it. I used to spend hours at a time on 2-4 sniping other snipers on the battlements. The biggest thing I learned naturally, sniper needs to lead his shots most of the time. I know that might sound strange since he's a hit scan class, but predicting where the enemy will end up makes landing headshots much easier. First, identify their A to B movement. Find a midpoint along that path, place your crosshair there, and wait for them to walk into it instead of scrambling to flick to their head. While this is very specific to sniper, the same principle applies to all classes, especially when you're learning. It's the key to hitting better pipes and direct rockets. Prediction is one of the most important skills in TF2. The better you can anticipate where your enemy is going, usually in a straight line, the easier it will be to land your shots. This concept applies to every weapon, including shotguns. However, weapons with a spread pattern like shotguns are more suited for close to medium range and rely more on reacting to movement rather than predicting it. That said, no one moves randomly. Everyone follows a movement pattern, which is called strafing. Strafing is when a player spams A or D or other buttons to move side to side quickly. For example, if you're playing engineer and fighting a scout with your shotgun, the scout will be strafing 90% of the time to dodge your shots. Since he's a highly mobile class, he can also use vertical movement to his advantage. Your job is to recognize your enemy's movement patterns so that the next time they move toward their usual B location, you're ready to light them up. Of course, this takes practice, but mastering it is a huge step in the right direction. This topic involves a lot of game knowledge, but let me simplify it to make it easier to understand. Understanding bullet spread and your weapons in general can make a huge difference. Knowing details like fixed versus random bullet spread can mean the difference between life and death. Mastering these mechanics will directly improve your aim and overall skill in the battlefield. As I hope you all know by now, TF2 has random bullet spread, which heavily affects shotguns, miniguns, this piece of trash, yes, the beggar's bazooka, and scatterguns. These weapons all have some degree of randomness in their bullet spread, and understanding this can help you recognize your limitations. Shotguns, for example, will always be confined to close to medium range. From my experience, there are two types of shotguns: scatterguns, including the stock shotgun, and the panic attack. When it comes to bullet spread, there are technically only two categories, random and fixed, but we'll break them down further in a moment. For now, you need to know that the panic attack has fixed bullet spread, meaning its bullet patterns follow a set grid and don't change randomly. However, the farther you are from your target, the fewer pellets will connect. From my observations, the panic attack also seems to have more significant damage falloff compared to stock. This happens because of its fixed spread, whereas a regular shotgun has the potential to hit targets at a longer distance. However, this doesn't mean the shotgun is better at long range, it just means that due to its random spread, you might get a tighter grouping of pellets by chance, increasing your damage. While this can be helpful, it's also a huge drawback. At point blank range, you could end up doing only 3 damage if your crosshair placement is unlucky. This is why I'd assign certain shotguns to specific maps. For example, the panic attack works well on maps like Dust Bowl, where tight choke points limit movement, ensuring you're almost always in close range, which is its specialty. But on more open maps like Upward, Badwater, or Swiftwater, the stock shotgun might be a better choice due to its longer range potential. In a way, using the shotgun is just gambling, but in the right scenario, it's a powerful tool. Remember when I said we could divide those groups further? Let's talk about scatterguns. The stock scattergun functions similarly to the stock shotgun, but the force of nature is more comparable to the panic attack. And no, it doesn't have fixed spread, but it does fire 20% more pellets per shot, increasing the likelihood of you hitting your target and dealing more damage in close range. Of course, I wouldn't suggest picking a scattergun based only on the map. You should also scan your surroundings, analyze choke points, and decide whether the force of nature or the stock scattergun is the better fit. This logic applies to every weapon in the game. I won't go over every single weapon for every class because that would take forever, but later in the video I'll provide some solutions to help you understand them better. One important tip is to experiment with your sensitivity settings to find which one works best for you. A good way to do this is by starting with a much higher sensitivity and gradually lowering it until you find a comfortable balance. Since TF2 is a fast-paced game where quick flicks are common, I recommend using a slightly higher sensitivity than usual. This allows for faster adjustments and keeps you from feeling restricted in your movement. The key concept here is that higher sensitivity gives you more flexibility, so my advice is to begin with a slightly elevated sensitivity and adjust from there. Additionally, if you're struggling to hit your shots on a particular day, try tweaking your sensitivity slightly, either raising or lowering it. Personally, I found that small adjustments can help me land shots more consistently. To put it simply, when you miss, it's usually because you're either overshooting or undershooting your target. The best way to fix this is by making minor sensitivity adjustments to match your reaction speed. And if you've seen Whiplash, rushing or dragging, well, never mind, I won't get into that, but the idea is the same. Fine-tune your settings until they work for you. That brings us to our next topic, positioning. This is arguably one of the most important aspects I'll cover in today's video. The key to good positioning is understanding your class's limitations, specifically how their movement capabilities affect combat. Knowing these limits can determine whether you win or lose an engagement. TF2 is a game heavily centered around movement. I actually made a whole video about it, so check that out after this one. Some classes have insane mobility, while others are much more grounded. In TF2, movement directly impacts survivability. Think of your health bar as just a buffer. It only buys you time to get hit a few times, but movement is what truly keeps you alive. Need an example? Let's take Trollger, the classic menace on high tower servers. He terrorizes your team left and right and doesn't seem to matter how many times you hit him. He just doesn't die. You've probably seen something similar, Trollgers seemingly unkillable, bouncing around like madmen. That's because of their insane mobility. The moment they go for a market garden, they can rocket jump right back into the air and retreat to their own team. They're only on the ground for a second, making them incredibly difficult to take down. But the moment they run out of rockets or whiff a market garden, suddenly they're vulnerable. This is a perfect example of how movement trumps raw health. Now compare that to Heavy, the definition of a bullet sponge. He has the highest health in the game, yet he can still be instantly deleted by a sniper headshot, or a backstab, or a crit rocket. In some ways, I'd argue Heavy is actually one of the weakest classes because he relies so much on his health rather than movement. Scout, on the other hand, only has 125 HP, but good luck hitting him. He's harder to headshot, harder to backstab, and his speed makes him a nightmare to track. If Scout had Heavy's health, he'd be an absolute monster. The same principle applies to Demonite. If you master tripping and charge movement, you become much harder to kill. The takeaway? The more you move, the harder you are to hit. That's why understanding your class's movement capabilities is crucial. If you know when you can escape or outmaneuver an opponent, you'll start winning way more fights. This next tip takes time to develop, but the best way to improve is simply by playing more TF2. I mean, I know that might sound obvious and not particularly helpful, but map knowledge comes with experience. It's not something I can directly teach you, but at least I can point you in the right direction. Understanding the layout of the map is crucial to outplaying your opponents. Knowing where you can gain high ground or retreat to safety can often mean the difference between life and death. Take Mercenary Park for example. While it's not the most popular map, it offers plenty of flank routes. The small hallways and vents scattered throughout the map provide great opportunities to catch enemies off guard. Another great example is Thunder Mountain, especially in its final stage. The sheer verticality of the map gives an incredible height advantage. There's practically no ceiling limit. Whether you're attacking or defending, controlling the high ground allows you to dictate engagements and gain a cleared edge over the enemy. At the end of the day, there's no shortcut to mastering flank routes and positioning. It all comes down to experience. If you played TF2 long enough, you should already understand how valuable these elements are, unless of course you've been living under a rock. Overextending is a common mistake in most games, and let's be honest, we've all done it. Whether it's Fortnite, Call of Duty, Apex, or TF2, overextending can quickly turn a good play into a disaster. If you're unfamiliar with the term, looking at you soldier mains, overextending is when you push too far ahead, ignoring the very obvious warning signs, like the entire enemy team staring you down while you stand there, alone. In short, it's playing out of position, and it's something you need to be mindful of at all times. It's usually pretty obvious when you've overextended. The telltale signs? Death, humiliation from your team, and possibly a vote kick. If you actually want to win in TF2, you need to avoid putting yourself in unnecessary danger, especially when your team isn't there to back you up. The issue is especially common with soldier mains who love rocket jumping deep into enemy territory only to get deleted in seconds. Instead of feeding the other team free kills, hold your ground and push with your team. This way you keep momentum on your side rather than handing it to the enemy. The next point ties into map knowledge, but focuses on something specific, map biases. Understanding these biases can help you predict how a match might play out and prepare accordingly. Take Mercenary Park for example. Yes, I'm bringing it up again, but it's a perfect case study for good, bad, and everything in between. Map biases refer to elements of a map that naturally favor one team over the other, whether due to choke points, sightlines, spawn locations, or overall design. If you've ever played Rainbow Six Siege before, you've probably noticed that defenders usually have the upper hand, with maps often designed in a way that forces attackers into disadvantageous positions. TF2 has a similar design element, and Mercenary Park's last point is a prime example. This area is extremely tight with limited entry points, making it almost impossible to push through if the defending team is even somewhat coordinated. Dust Bowl is another classic example. The map is notoriously narrow and small, which makes attacking as blue incredibly difficult. Every point funnels players into a handful of tight choke points where a well-placed sentry nest, sticky trap, or heavy can single-handedly stop a push. Of course, victories aren't impossible. Blue teams have beaten Dust Bowl countless times, but the map's design is inherently biased in favor of red. Recognizing these biases isn't just about complaining that a map is unfair, it's about adapting to the situation. If you know a map heavily favors defenders, you can adjust your class choices and strategies accordingly. On Dust Bowl, for instance, bringing an engineer with a short circuit can help clear out spam projectiles and create a safer push through the first gate. On defense, a pyro air blasting enemies into tight corridors can single-handedly hold a choke. And sometimes, the best way to counter a map bias is to simply not play the map at all. That's why Mercenary Park isn't exactly the most beloved map in the rotation. People recognize its flaws and opt out entirely. And at the end of the day, TF2 and most multiplayer games will never have a truly balanced map. But if you understand their biases, you can use them to your advantage instead of letting them work against you. Game modes in TF2 are fun, and they help keep the game fresh, even though, let's be honest, we hardly get any new content. That being said, not all game modes are created equal, especially when it comes to actually learning the game. If you're new to TF2 and want to improve, stay far away from Capture the Flag. I won't go into full detail because I already made a whole video about it, which you should definitely watch after this one, but the bottom line is, CTF doesn't teach you anything useful. It doesn't reinforce strategy, positioning, or even team play. Everything I've talked about so far, except maybe aim, goes out the window. I've seen plenty of players who only queue for 2-4, and while they might enjoy it, they don't make much progress in terms of developing playstyles, learning different class rules, or improving positioning. Now, of course, that's totally all fine, but if you actually want to get better at TF2, avoid CTF like the plague. And if you play 2-4 or any CTF map because you just find it fun and casual and you just want a never-ending team deathmatch, then go for it, but then this video might not be for you necessarily. Instead, I highly recommend playing Attack and Defend and Payload. These modes are fantastic for learning because of their clear objectives and structured gameplay. In Attack and Defend and Payload, you always know when you're attacking and when you're defending. This helps you understand class roles, positioning, and how to coordinate with your team. Having a linear objective makes it easier to recognize good positioning and strong class choices for each situation. This is why objective-based game modes have been a core part of multiplayer gaming for years. Sure, King of the Hill is technically an objective-based game mode, but in my opinion it has the same problem as CTF. It often just turns into a team deathmatch where players focus more on fragging than playing the objective. Control point maps are okay, but they still lack a clear distinction between attack and defense. Since both teams are constantly pushing and retreating, it often feels more like a tug of war than an objective-based game mode. This leads to stalemates and standoffs that don't really help newer players learn. That's why Attack and Defend and Payload are the best learning experiences in TF2. Not only do they reinforce proper strategy and positioning, but they also come up with some of TF2's best designed maps, especially like the older Payload maps, which are still some of the most balanced and well-structured maps in the game. Now, if you're serious about improving in TF2, stick to Payload and Attack and Defend and leave 2-4 and CTF behind. Man vs. Machine, especially Boot Camp, is a great place to test out weapons at your disposal. While I made a video discussing the flaws of MVM, I still believe it's a valuable mode for practicing different weapons. Thanks to the modifiers and upgrades you can apply, MVM highlights subtle weapon benefits that might go unnoticed in casual play. When I first started playing TF2, I found the sheer variety of weapons overwhelming. MVM, however, exaggerates each weapon's effects, making their strength and mechanics more obvious. Take the airstrike for example. It can feel difficult to use in casual modes, especially since newer players pair it with a parachute, only to get immediately sniped out of the air. But in MVM where survival is more forgiving, flying around with the airstrike and parachute becomes more viable. For this reason, I think MVM is a great way to experiment with different weapons and see their potential in more exaggerated yet practical setting. It's kind of like a ×100 server except with mechanics that are actually relevant and useful. Another advantage of MVM for weapon testing is that it removes a lot of unpredictability of casual matches. In a typical game, you're dealing with random crits, varying player skill levels, and constantly shifting team dynamics. In MVM, enemy bots behave in a more consistent and predictable manner, allowing you to focus purely on how a weapon functions without worrying about getting ambushed or one-shot by a random demo man. This makes it easier to experiment with weapons that might feel underwhelming in casual play and learn their quirks in a controlled environment. Plus, the upgrade system can reveal interesting synergies like how explosive headshots on Sniper can suddenly turn into a crowd-clearing powerhouse, something that's much harder to appreciate in regular matches. When it comes to teamwork, MVM, especially in its harder modes, demands a level of cooperation that isn't common in regular TF2. While TF2 isn't generally known for a strict team coordination, working together in MVM makes beating a wave significantly easier. I've played TF2 for a while now. Sure, I'm not competing in any tournaments, but I've improved a lot over the years. Even so, when I have a few teammates in MVM who aren't pulling their weight, it makes things noticeably harder, especially in 2 cities when efficiency is key. Having a team that communicates, understands their roles, and plays effectively can make the difference between a smooth run and a frustrating loss. In fact, MVM arguably requires more teamwork than any other TF2 game mode. While it's possible for you and a friend to carry a team to some extent, I've never seen so much discussion about class choices in any other game mode. But in MVM, players are much more vocal about making sure everyone is running a meta class with the right weapons. The push for optimization is so strong that you'll often see entire lobbies debating loadouts before the match even begins. Understanding class roles is a crucial part of TF2, and MVM highlights this more than any other mode, even more than casual play. It strips TF2 down to its core mechanics, making class roles unmistakably clear. The medic remains a vital support class, while scout functions as a heavy support unit, primarily for cash collection. Demo man, soldier, and heavy take on offensive roles, and engineer shifts between defense and offense thanks to the rescue ranger. MVM reinforces these foundations by clearly defining what each class brings to the table. Spy and sniper, for example, excel at eliminating targets, making them situational but powerful choices. Meanwhile, Scout, despite being primarily used for cash collection, can still deal solid damage and chase down enemy scout bots that have slipped past defenses. It also highlights how the game's meta has evolved over time. Classes like Heavy and Demoman, once labeled as defensive, are now considered top-tier offensive choices in MVM. Ever noticed how the in-game class selection still categorizes them under offense, defense, and support? That system feels outdated, and there are plenty of discussions online about how class roles have shifted over the years. Maybe I'll even make a video about it in the future. Who knows? At this point, this section is more of a nitpick, but there are still a few things that newer players should keep in mind. Mainly, don't make life harder for your team. Specifically, let's talk about supporting your engineer and medic. These might seem like broad topics, but they're often ignored or forgotten in the heat of battle. If your engineer is struggling to upgrade because he's under attack by stickies, rockets, or any other threats, it's your job to draw attention away from the sentry nest. If you can eliminate the enemy soldier, demoman, or whoever's causing trouble, even better. A strong sentry nest is crucial. It provides ammo and health through the dispenser, speeds up reinforcements with teleporters, and serves as a powerful defensive tool with the sentry itself. If you see your engineer dealing with a spy, be ready to step in and defend the nest, especially if the NG goes down. It's not your job to maintain the sentry nest in his absence, but keeping him alive is just as important. If you're playing engineer yourself, consider helping your teammate upgrade or repair if needed. If a sentry or other building is being sapped, remove the sapper if it means keeping your team's defense intact. Likewise, if you're leaving spawn and notice a teleporter being sapped, switch to engineer and fix it. It's usually safe since the spy is likely dead, and restoring the teleporter helps your entire team. If the teleporter isn't level 3, take a few moments to upgrade it. Not only will it make your engineer's life easier, but it also benefits you and the rest of your team. And of course, before the round even starts, help your engineer set up by leaving ammo boxes for him. You don't need them during setup, but he does. If you rocket jump, just grab the health and leave the ammo. Your engineer will thank you. Keeping your medic alive is pretty simple. For starters, don't drag him to his death. If I'm healing you, I'm not going to follow you deep into enemy territory, especially if we don't have Uber yet. If you charge straight into their spawn and the entire enemy team is waiting there, I'll try to hit you with a crossbow from a safe distance, but I'm not running in after you. When you're being pocketed, remember that you have an unarmed teammate with only 150 health attached to you. Be mindful of positioning and don't treat your medic like an invincible buff. However, if your medic has an Uber and dies before using it, that's on him, not you. He should have popped it. There are also small things you can do to make your medic's life easier. If he's on fire, air blast him or throw a jar of mad milk to help. If there are multiple medics on your team, encourage them to heal each other for survivability. And if you see your medic struggling against a spy, don't leave him to fend for himself, help him out. A medic isn't just a walking dispenser, he can't be smashed with a wrench and instantly fixed. He's a valuable asset and needs to be protected. This might be a nitpick, but it's also one of the most frustrating things to witness. Don't follow your spy around the map, especially when he's invisible. Crossfire is a real problem in TF2, and no class suffers from it more than Spy. Just because he's taking a back route to flank doesn't mean you should be trailing right behind him. Give him space to get where he needs to be without accidentally exposing himself to stray bullets or explosions. It's beyond infuriating when a pyro only spots a spy because they were originally focused on shooting at a soldier, but thanks to some unlucky crossfire, the spy ends up going up in flames. It's just, please don't follow your spy. Don't blow his cover. Please. Also, if you see a sniper on your team, do your best to walk around him whenever possible, especially if he's carrying the team and landing headshots left and right. It is in your team's best interest to let him focus without unnecessary distractions. This isn't the biggest issue since it's bound to happen anyway, but if you can avoid it, please don't plant your thick skull right in front of his scope. The last thing he needs is a teammate unknowingly blocking his shot and at a perfect moment. Just give him space and let him do his job. As a beginner, don't main a class. I know that might sound weird, even stupid, but trust me, it's the best advice you can get as a newer player. Maining a class, especially early on, locks you into one playstyle and one playstyle only. Sure, maybe you're great at scout, but sometimes your team doesn't need another scout. Maybe they need a heavy, a medic, or God forbid, another soldier main. The point is, sticking to one class limits you, and you can even take away the chance to discover other classes you might enjoy even more. It's natural to gravitate towards a class you're good at, especially when you're starting out. I did too, but looking back, I regret spending so much time on just one class. Yeah, it was fun, but the game becomes so much better when you mix things up. Variety keeps things fresh, helps your team more, and actually makes you a better player overall. Plus, only playing one class can get really boring and might even push you to quit the game when things get too difficult. Expanding your skill set not only makes TF2 more enjoyable, but it also prevents burnout and improves your adaptability. I wish I had done this earlier because now, trying to learn engineer feels way harder than it should be. I had the patience back then, I should have used it. That said, this advice is for beginners, so if you've played this for a while and understand the game well enough, then of course, go ahead and main a class. But if you're still learning, do yourself a favor and try everything. And if you ever need a refresher on a class, some weapons, or just some fun gimmicks, my channel is dedicated to that stuff. I'm sure you'll find something to help you out. Well, that's all I have for today's video. I think I just about covered all the foundational stuff that you need to know, and if I haven't, it's probably because I made a video about it already. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.